short delay and then you can start.
Oh,
All right, you should be good to go.
All righty. Welcome everybody to the City of Onalaska Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. Today's date is June 3rd, 2020. Notice has been duly posted, and we will start with the roll call. First, Alder Jim Olson. Jim, you're muted.
I see him.
There we go.
There we go.
Eric.
Jim, you're with us? Okay, thank
Yep.
you. Alder Dan Stevens, it's me, I'm here. Alder Diane Wolf.
Present.
Also joining us, we have Jared Holter, Chief Ashbeck, Hope Rochelle, Amanda Jackson, Fred Bueller. This looks like Hildy. Dan Wick. Also joining us is Alder Tom Smith, Her Honor Mayor Kim Smith, City Clerk Carrie, City Administrator Eric, and I don't think I missed anybody. So with that said, we will go to item number 2, approval of minutes from previous meeting.
Motion to approve minutes from the previous meeting.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by Olson to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Item 3, public input. Anybody wishing to provide input, please signify. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Second call for public input. By the way, if you want to have public input, you need to unmute to let me know that you want to speak. Third and final call for public input. Hearing no public input is now closed. Consideration and action and possible action on the following items. Under finance, item 4, 2019 audit presentation from the City of Onalaska Financials, Mr. Fred Bueller.
Hey, I saw Justin Peterson when I first logged on, so I'm assuming he's still with us.
Yep.
I'm gonna turn it over to Justin Peterson. He's represents Hawkins Ash CPAs. So Justin, I'll turn it over to you.
Are you guys able to see my screen share?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So as Fred said, I'm an audit manager with Hawkins Ash CPAs. I've been the in-charge auditor for the past 4 years for the city's audit. And I'm going to go through the summary financial statements report. You guys should have received 3 reports from Fred. I think the summary financials, the management letter, and also the full financial statements. And then if you guys have any questions throughout my time, let me know. So what you guys are seeing now on your screen is the summary financial statement report. This first page of the report basically states that this is really for presentation purposes only. Presentation purposes just for this, I guess, council meeting. From here on out, you should use the full financial statements, which has the full financial statement disclosures, all the guidelines. This first page basically includes everything in the city's financial statements. So it includes the governmental accounts, the business type accounts, and also the tax accounts. Kind of some main outlines with this, some numbers comparative from 2018 to 2019. The interfund accounts went up significantly this year, as you can see right here. These ones, and the reason for that is because the money that's being held in the 2019 capital fund that are for the utility projects. And so basically the cash is being held in the 2019 capital project fund, but that cash is being held for those future projects. Another thing that you will notice down at the bottom of the page, the equity changes or the fund balance changes. One of the big ones is if you look at these other fund balances, last year the total was $10 million. This year the total is $6.7 million. And that's really because in 2018, the 2019 NAN was received at the end of December. So we needed to book that, and that kind of inflated the fund balance in all those other funds. And then as that money was spent down in 2019, the fund balance really came back to where it should be. So then the graph on the right side of the screen kind of shows that, where in 2018, this green tower was significantly higher because of basically when the debt proceeds came in. And then the general fund balance has just been gradually growing over the last 4 years. These pages show the general fund only revenue, and then it's compared to the budget, and it's also compared to 2018's actual. The chart on the right kind of shows how the revenue is broken out. These numbers are pretty comparable to last year. Last year, the taxes and special assessments was 68%, so this year 67%, pretty close. Intergovernmental was 18%, this year 17%. Like I said, pretty comparable to where it was. For a municipality this size, this is a pretty standard breakdown of where the general fund revenue would come from. There were a couple items that kind of stood out this year. This year, interest revenue was significantly higher. That had to do with, obviously, at the time this past year, the interest rates were higher. There was also more cash being held, which led to that large increase in the revenue amount. And also this miscellaneous $53,000. That was for an accrued legal payable that was being held on the books and was written off in the current year. This page or this chart shows the comparable between the expenses in the general fund from the budget and the actual. And like with the revenue, the breakdown is pretty comparable to where it was last year. Pretty standard, with the large portion being made up from police and fire. Then you have the general government, public works, cultural rec, and education. One thing that kind of stands out that's a little bit different because it's not budgeted. This $275,000 is the council approved transfer at the end of the year. This breakdown is showing the income statement for water, sewer, and stormwater. And the chart on the right is kind of showing the operating income, operating loss over the 4 years. One thing that kind of gets spewed a little bit in this operating income chart is depreciation is included. So it's not necessarily a direct expense that was purchased this year, but it's things that were capitalized and being depreciated over the term of their life. I would expect with some of the rate increases that have happened that this would start turning around a little bit. Another thing that stands out a little bit on this page is there were contributions in the sewer this year. And that was for developer contributions. And going to these last couple pages, the screen on the left kind of shows all the miscellaneous small funds, where their fund balance was at the beginning of the year, where their fund balance was at the end. Kind of what I talked about earlier, this $3.5 million fund balance is what kind of inflated that other fund balance on that prior chart. And as you can see, a majority of that was spent down in the current year. Another kind of a new fund that's showing up is the TIP 5. Obviously, there hasn't been a ton of activity in fiscal year 2019, but you would expect more activity going forward. This is kind of just gives us general other financial information. The first bullet is our auditor's opinion that we gave to the city's financials. The opinion was unmodified or clean. I guess the best opinion that you can receive from an audit report. Then it kind of gives an update of the general fixed assets this year. There were $5.1 million in fixed asset additions. $2.3 million of that came from infrastructure. 1.5 was recording the Dash Park on the city's books. 230,000 building improvements, 216 for vehicles. And as you can see, some miscellaneous equipment, land, so forth. For water, sewer, and storm utilities, total fixed assets added this year were $3.3 million, of which 1.6 was contributed by developers. And then this long-term debt, this is only taking into account general obligation long-term debt, calculating the city's debt limit. As you can see, the city is well below the calculated debt limit. And then as you go through something I wanted to highlight on this is it shows that there was a significant portion of debt that was written off or that was retired in the current year. But you need to remember that there was the $5.2 million in water mortgage revenue bond, $3.4 million in sewer revenue bond, and $2.2 million in stormwater revenue bond that isn't shown on this chart. So there's actually more debt that was taken out in the year. And then this is just recapping another report that is in the full financial statements. That report shows that the internal controls for the city of your size, we did not identify any material compliance violations. And then with the communication with those charging governance, we didn't occur or didn't come across any major problems while we were working through that. So that's the summary financial statements. Did anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Peterson? Justin, I guess you get off easy. Regards to Bob Spencer too. Give him a hard time for me.
Will do.
What is the pleasure of the committee with regards to the, well, this was just a presentation, so we don't have to vote on that.
No, we do. We have to accept the final audit as presented.
All right, well, what is the pleasure of the committee?
Make a motion that we approve the 2019 audit presentation financials.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Diane to approve the 2019 audit presentation financials. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the financials, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Financials are accepted. Item 5, the 2020 Omni Center financials. Interesting. Fred?
Okay, the Omni Center, the financials in front of you are dated 5/21 of 2020. If you go to the third page in, it refers to the revenues. The 35,695.92 represents a transfer to the Omni Center, which is the first quarter of, which is 1% of the sales. And then tourism addition is a small amount of additional dollars. They pay quarterly to the Omni Center. And then the special projects fund contributes, I think if you take 15,000, roughly over 64,000, 63 to $64,000 a year, that is the first quarter contribution. So that's how the reconciliation of the transfer in on the Omni Center books show. And if you look on the
If I
sheet,
can ask a quick question, our quarter, our year coincides with the calendar year.
that's
So
correct.
quarter one is January, February, and March?
Yep. Our fiscal is the calendar.
Okay,
And so when you look at the revenues, they come to $175,313. Expenditures of 228, which is about 53,566.83 deficit. Now keep in mind, there's 2 months lag time in reference to room tax dollars. And so that's why it may be the month of May, but we only received through March intake. But at the same time, this is a unique year. So I think we can honestly say there isn't going to be a whole lot of money coming in April or May anyway. Unless you have any questions, Dan, I think is also on the call as well.
Dan Wick?
I have nothing to report, just besides the building's open. We have groups coming in. We're working on putting ice in. As we speak, we ran into a little obstacle last night as the storm knocked out our chiller. So all the ice progress we had made the previous 3 days reverted back to water. So we are starting the process over of making ice, hoping to have ice early next week.
Is this the chiller that's due to be replaced?
It is the chiller that's due to replace that we just had work done on it. With the electrical storm that we had last night, it's not uncommon for the items to get knocked out. We did have staff go up there. We could not get it. We actually blew a few fuses inside of the chiller. So we had to have a vendor come this morning to replace those.
Great, thank you, Dan.
I will move that we accept and place on file the 2020 Omni Center financials.
Second.
So motion by Diane, seconded by Jim to accept the 2020 Omni Center financials. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Financials are accepted. Moving on to item 6, the 2020 general fund financials. Fred?
Hey, before I start, I guess I'm going to ask the city administrator, without getting into too much detail, are you okay? What has happened over this period of last week or in 2 weeks is I'm preparing the document for revenues and expenditures, forecasting the revenues as well as the expenditures of what it may look like for the year of 2020. Now, with that said, there's a few accounts that I can and I wish it's up to Eric, or if he wants to wait until next week, Wednesday, to get into more detail of the revenues in particular. Expenditures, I'm not prepared to discuss a whole lot tonight, but I have a pretty good idea on the revenues. I think one of the things that you just heard earlier tonight, which is the fact that the city shined very well in the interest income. Unlike 2020, the interest rate went down 60 basis points. At the close of last year, the rates were like 1.72. Now they're 1.11. So with that said, there's a significant loss in revenue that was anticipated for the year of 2020, but won't happen. So I don't know if Eric wants me just to wait, but or discuss some of these issues that the reports that you have in front of you.
My preference would be to have a holistic conversation next week because we don't have the full picture right now, as Fred, you're indicating, especially on the expense side. However, any information you have, it's not a secret. If people wish to discuss the information we have regarding the revenues, that is acceptable. But just keep that in mind, though, it's not a full picture. And I'm concerned it leads to potentially a negative impression where we don't really have, for example, we know we have lost revenue, but we also have reduced expenses in some cases, and we need to be able to balance that out. We don't have that second half of the equation. Also, there's a question about the COVID-19 reimbursements fund, which could also offset much of our expenses, which we don't have to be able to bring to the picture right now as well.
Right. And with that said, since the last time we've met, the city of Onalaska has been in what they call routes to recovery grant application eligible for $308,698 to reimburse us for some of the things necessary during this COVID-19 that took place. And I'm pretty confident that we'll come pretty close to that dollar amount in this period of time. So with that said, I'll just, that's somewhat the area of the revenues and the expenditures. Again, the key thing is there's a lot of moving parts, as just to refresh everybody's memory, is the city of Onalaska had 3 new positions in the police department with an anticipated date starting, but again, contingent on common council approval, of which everything went down the tube when it comes to the COVID-19. But we had police department 3 positions, 3 positions in the fire department, 4-1. Again, contingent on how we stand and where we stand during the course of the year. And then all of a sudden this epidemic happened and here we are today. In reference to that, I don't, there isn't less, and also since the last time we met, the city of Onalaska took a position on the pool, which is going to be less expenditures, less revenues. And I think Dan Wick has gone into good detail of, to bring the council up to speed on that issue. Unless somebody has a question or if you want to ask Dan, but I know Jared is also on the call, but that's pretty much where we kind of stand on the expenditure side for the general fund.
So are we thinking on the revenue side, it sounds like there's some question marks. Do we want to refer acceptance, or should we accept the financials as they stand right now, or refer this until a different meeting when we have more information?
I can tell you that when you look at the document in the future, it's going to take exactly what you have in front of you. I just took this exact data that you have in front of you, put it in an Excel, and finished it for the rest of the year. So it's the same document. So, I mean, nothing's going to change. This is the financials as of the date of period ending May 31st, which is April bills paid in May. Nothing is going to change there. The only thing that I'm going to be doing next week is forecasting for the rest of the year.
All right.
That would
Well,
be
what
the
is the will of the committee?
I move that we accept the 2020 general fund financials and place them on file.
Second.
All right, motion by Alder Wolf, second by Alder Olson to accept the 2020 general fund financials and place them on file. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
General fund financials are accepted. Turning the page, item 7, collection on individual fines deemed uncollectible. And this was an item, I believe it was carried over from last month.
I'm going to turn it over to Amanda if she's still there.
I am. So this is an item that was carried over from last month. We had a discussion because we do occasionally see individuals who are rejected from the Wisconsin State Debt Collection, which is our main form of collection for individuals who owe the city money. I did have Hildy, our clerk of court, here is with us tonight as well, because she just has a better understanding of how this works and how that process works. And so she can talk a little bit about how they use collections, how they get transferred back and forth. And then she has, I think, a few updated numbers for you as far as uncollectible individuals. Hildy, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Hear me now? Okay. So I guess I'm here to explain just the way that the collection goes is that for ordinance violations, anything that's a non-traffic, after they're 90 days past due, we send them a letter that says they have 30 days to pay. After that 30 days expires, then I list of all the people that are going to go, and I let Kim know and the state debt in a XML file. The traffic citations are a little bit different because once they're 30 days past due, I send them a reminder notice. They get 30 days to pay. If they don't pay within that 30 days, then I suspend them. After 30 days, then they also get sent to state debt. So what happens with the collection is they actually sit out there for a period of 3 years. If I'm the only one that's collecting on them. So we have Jane Smith, she's got a retail theft from 2018. I submit her in late 2018. She sits out there for 3 years. If they can't collect on her, they ultimately return that to me as an uncollectible. Once that person is deemed uncollectible, if I find any information out about her, a new address, if she's changed her name, got a different driver's license or whatever, she got married or divorced, even though she's deemed uncollectible and I have that new information, they will not take that debt again. That is supposed to be wiped off the books. If she has that same debt and I submit her and she has 4 other debts from other municipalities or circuit courts that have been submitted, my debt can sit out there as long as they're collecting, be out there for 10 years. So I really can't answer for you really if when a debt becomes uncollectible once they get to SDC. They after they send return file, and then what I do is a letter that says, hey, you still owe us some money. If I've already suspended their driver's license and it's an ordinance violation, there's nothing more I should do to collect on them.
Okay, I know we had a little bit of audio, but I caught probably 90% of that. And
Okay.
I mean, I understood, but I have some experience with collections. So did anybody else have any questions for Hildy? Okay, Fred, with reference to the.
There was some question about how many.
Go ahead.
I know that there was some question as to how there was a magic number of $5,000 that was thrown out. I went through all of the outstanding debts that we have, all the outstanding fines from going back to the year 1900, and we only have 3 that meet that $5,000 threshold. And I think they had included that in the packet, and those are just strictly on Alaska's debt. So they may have multiple citations in other jurisdictions, but that's just the total for Unalaska.
All right, and the total between these 3 is approximately $25,000.
Correct.
And I believe this was on the agenda, and the idea was to essentially write this off, not try to collect it anymore. Is that?
I think there's just the one gentleman right now is I don't know how, I don't have my paperwork with me, but it's a Travis Heel. It's the highest one, I think. Maybe a TW would be or TH is the initial on the paper. Those are debts from like 2007, and most of them are truancy violations. This guy's in and out of jail. He's also been in prison. And I think he's slated to go back on a revocation of an extended supervision. He's an absconder at this particular moment. So he will never get any money out of him.
With that said, Dan, to elaborate on what you were saying, the city of Unalaska has a policy in place where we, how should I say, with the judge's authority, sign a memo each year. It goes to it goes to the Joint Municipal Court Board, and then on the council, or F&P, and on the council to take off our books. For example, we only keep on our books the last 5 years. So but we take it off our books, but we continue to attempt to collect, even though it's not, the numbers are no longer in the books.
All right, so in terms I would use, we would charge it off, but we would still leave the door open to collect it in the future.
Correct.
Is there a reason that, well, I know we discussed last month that there are protocols that you need to do to stay compliant with an active debt, where you have to make at least one documented collection attempt in the course of a 1 year period. But and this might be a question for Amanda, is there any reason why the city would not be able to get a small claims judgment? In which case you don't have to keep trying to collect it annually. It stays out there until they either die, go bankrupt, or.
So because these are actually a judgment, we can actually docket our initial judgment. It's ultimately $5 to docket the judgment. We have to do it within a certain period of time. The problem is with individuals like these, we have to docket each individual judgment. And so where your $10,000 could be made up of 57 citations, we would have to docket the judgment 57 times. And so we have done that for some individuals with larger collectible amounts, where it's perhaps, for example, a retail theft where they owe thousands in restitution, and we can do it in one kind of swoop. We have done that, but generally speaking, that's the method which we would go to circuit court with. It would be just to docket the judgment. I could look into going the small claims route.
So my understanding is, so if we have a judgment and we just need to docket it, I'm familiar with the $5 process. I don't know that you can get the same judgment on the same amount unless it's a separate judgment, but the cost for a small claims case would be, it's approximately $100 plus service costs. In the case where there was more than 20 or 25 dockets that needed to be happen, it might be a nice way to make it an omnibus. But I don't have a problem if from my point of view, if we essentially write this off, as long as we leave the door open to have it collected. And I think that having it docketed is a good methodology. My experience is sometimes you have a debt, the person is in and out of prison, and they are not collectible. We know that we're not going to see money in 2020, and 2021 is not looking too good either. My experience, however, is sometimes some of the people get their act together, turn their life around, and at some point they're going to want to do something like buy a house. If they have a docket out there, they're not going to be able to do so, and then we have a little bit of leverage. Even if we offer a settlement at some future point, I guess what I'm saying is if we just leave it out there and kind of hope that they'll come back, if we don't do anything, that 25,000, we will lose the right to collect that. However, if we docket it or have a judgment, we can essentially stop trying to collect it. But maybe some of them over time are going to come back, and it would exceed the cost of what it would take to procure that judgment. So, you know, I think about some of the expenses that we have right now that pop up. This kind of feeds the kitty for maybe 10, 15 years in the future, where somebody's going to call up and say, hey, I need this cleared. What can we work out? And that's revenue that we're not expecting that we can start to work into the system. So I don't know if I want to put this into a motion, if we want to discuss that or bring it to council. Docketing or getting a judgment before we stop trying to collect on it would be a course of action that I would endorse for the policy of the city of Onalaska. Hildy, if you're talking, I saw your mouth moving. I couldn't hear you.
Well, I thought about saying something, but the one thing we have to be really careful of, and this is probably more Amanda's area of expertise, but once we sign that contract with SDC, basically what we're doing is technically we're washing our hands of it. The contract says that we can't do any efforts to collect on it. We have that judgment against that one guy for $6,000, but because it's also at SDC, we can't take any action on that.
Aren't they turning it back over to us saying that, hey, we tried, nothing's going to happen? I
After
don't think
the
they can have it both ways. I mean,
after the 3 years, correct. So I
Right,
mean,
right. But it's not always 3 years. It's 3 years if I'm the only debt. It could be 7 years if they're paying off a debt before mine. You know, they come in that hierarchy, like who files their claims first. If I'm debt number 7, they can collect until all those other debts are paid off. So it might not be 3 years.
well, we're looking at essentially charging off a debt as it's presented back to us to take it off our books. So really, that would be the time that we would consider taking action on this. If you're suggesting.
Yeah, what we would have to do is,
longer.
well, I think what we'd have to do is, because I think the statute of limitations to file the judgment is 6 years. So we would have to do a tickler for the 6 years expiration, and then of the earliest fine, I think, because then we could put them all on one small claims. And I think small claims is still a $10,000 limit.
It may have gone up to 15, but
Just went up to 10 a couple years ago, right before I left.
regardless, in the case for the debt that was 10,527.43, if we just docketed it, if we just took a small claims case for 10,000, I mean, 10,000 is better than zero, is my thought. And if that meant that we avoided attorney costs by sacrificing the $527, that seems like that would be good policy. So,
But the problem is that I think his debts start in 2007.
so I mean, I think we're looking for an overall policy. The 3 listed here, likely TH is not collectible because our clerk's office, we can't validate that we had made collection attempts for several of the years. And so I don't know that we have any options with respect to TH, but with the other 2, and as you can see, their years are much more recent, we would have the ability to go back, pull their citations, and we could look at docketing for those.
all right. So are we looking for a motion?
I think we just kind of want a general guidance as far as how you'd like us to handle these moving forward. We don't see them often, but when we do, they typically tend to be higher amounts.
Sure. I understand that the older debt, if we cannot prove we've met the Fair Debt Collection Act requirements, is that unfortunately that's just a loss. But going forward for these debts, and I'm not sure if we need to set a dollar threshold or just a policy. I don't think docketing doing the work to docket something for a $80 ticket is fruitful, but you know, if it's thousands of dollars owed to the city of Onalaska, I would not want to forfeit that. So I think I've made my opinions clear. Diane and Jim, do you have thoughts? So I'm not hornswoggling the whole thing.
Well, there, you get to a point of diminishing returns, and you just have to say what's in the best interest. You know, what is that figure, and how long are we going to deal with that before, you know, we have another conversation for an hour? I don't know. I don't know what you. I understand. I understand. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just have to take a look at what are the opportunities of actually collecting that. Because I have a debt out myself on that, and I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know. I'm going after.
Well, the opportunity is $5, or the cost is $5, and the opportunity is the debt. So we're risking $5 to collect the whole thing, and we don't have to do any work for that. So that they'll come to us if they want to clear it. We're not going to have anybody call them or collect, or it just sits out there on their, if it's docketed, it's on their credit report, and it would preclude them from obtaining title insurance. So the return or the cost is finite. We know what that is.
Yeah.
And the idea is that Hildy doesn't have to like follow up with that account year after year, or Amanda. Either they come to us, they come to the city looking to make a deal or pay it off, or we never hear from them again. But it's off our books. So it's a little, it's a cleaner balance sheet, I think, is what we're looking for.
Yeah, well, I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. You know, that's fine. That's my feeling on it. I mean, if we're talking about, you know, a thing of diminishing returns, then you have to take a completely different look at this and say, okay, we don't want anybody spending more time on this. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. But,
Okay.
so I guess if that's what you're saying, I'm agreeing with you. So,
All right, Diane?
Thank you. I do like the docket approach. Minimal cost for possible returns, and less work for staff. So I do like that approach. So.
All right, well, if we don't have to have a motion, I think that sounds like we have a general consensus, Amanda. Does that give you the guidance? All right. Then with that said, I guess we can move on to item 8. Authorization to use special project account designated fund balance in the amount of $10,264.82 from account 204-34151 for the purchase of police department items. I don't know if this is Fred or if the chief gets to talk about this.
I'll turn it over to Chief Charles Ashbeck.
All right, thank you, Chairman Stevens. Yes, I've identified a couple needs in our department and would like authorization to have money transferred out of the special project account to put towards these items for purchase as listed in my memo, and I'm happy to provide more detail about the items if anyone is interested. Diane?
Thank you, Chief. Just wondering when towards the purchase of an enclosed trailer, how big is it? You know, what is, typically we get pictures or something. So I'm just looking like how, you know, capacity, how big is it? How long is it? What?
Sure, good questions. And I'll be honest with you, we're still working on the details.
Okay.
We're envisioning something similar to maybe a 6x12, 8x12, somewhere in that ballpark, to both house and transport. We have numerous items between target stands and heavy metal type targets, equipment that currently staff are usually loading in their personal vehicles and transporting out to our range instead of in city equipment, which can obviously bring along some inherent risks and dangers of doing that. But just the mere fact of efficiencies, to have it stored, reduces staff time to bring all the stuff out of the basement of City Hall, load it up, take it out there and reverse that. So less amount of staff time, overtime, all of that is just more efficiencies for a long-term use out of something like this.
Sure. Thank you.
Chief, would this be specifically for transportation to the Holman Rod and Gun Club? Or would the trailer also be used for other purposes? I mean, would the police department ever need to haul anything else anywhere?
My feelings right now are it's probably going to be strictly for this equipment, just because we're going to probably outfit it with some shelving and other modifications inside that we'll be able to handle in-house. And so could there be some room if we took this stuff out, if we had kind of a more of emergency use for it? Sure. But I think in general, we would keep it for this particular use.
Chair.
Yes, Alder Wolf.
Thank you, sir. So Chief, and where will it be stored? Do you have a spot for it?
Right now, we're just planning in our parking lot area at the City Hall.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be working, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, we'll go through the process of receiving bids as normal to try to find the best price from vendors in our area. So I can provide more information once we've finalized on a vendor.
I move that we authorize to use special project account designated fund balance in the amount of $10,264.82 from account number 204-34151 for purchase of police department items.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Wolf, second by Alder Olson. To authorize $10,264.82 from account 204-34151 for the police department items. Is there any discussion? I would just like to, and I don't have a problem with this in as a whole in theory, but I know that the council is going to be reviewing the state of the budget, where we're at, and I think I would like to get the entire council's view on this spending after. I would like for us to have the opportunity to kind of see where we are for total revenues, which we kind of talked about a little bit before. So I'm just suggesting that I would support this, but I would put it on the non-consent. Fred?
Just wanted to mention to you is the city of Onalaska, we have what they call the general fund. We have enterprise funds that are self-sustaining, which is water, sewer, storm, cemetery, omni. Then we have special projects funds, which consist of Fund 204, of which this one is, Fund the refuse and recycling, joint municipal court. So those are funds that are independently function with the dollars that they have coming in or have over time. For in other words, the Fund 204 is the fund, the special projects fund is the fund in which usually there's revenue coming in, expenditure going out, and the end result is neutral. There is never in a special projects fund of Fund 204, that is, there is no tax levy or, but for example, joint municipal court, which is a special project fund, which is Fund 208, does have a tax levy, but this one does not. This one here is a very neutral, in other words, this is actually the same fund that we run a K-9 through. Sufficient dollars to running the program.
Okay, so what, can you tell me what the source of the funding is for this fund?
This fund here, for an example, Dan Wick, if he's still on the phone, can explain many different programs that Dan Wick uses Fund 204 for. Dan, are you there?
Yes. So we use 204 as kind of an in and out account, Dan. Our senior programs, our donation accounts that we run, all of that account goes into our 204. Our traveling programs are programs that are meant to create profits and stuff, and then the money stays in those accounts year after year. They don't zero out each budget year. So some of them do have in I don't know the police departments, but it's funds that they have collected through donations or things like that. That's how we utilize it in the Park and Rec, and we collect donations or we charge fees for it, and it's all kept in Fund 204.
All right,
And then on the police department, they run their golf outing, and contributions come in for the K-9 unit, as well as they also use this for the DARE Great program to help support some of the things that they run through that system.
all right. Well, that's really good information. I appreciate that. So long and short of this is not affected by the general fund or capital improvements fund or enterprise fund. So this has zero impact on the city of Onalaska taxpayers.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion as presented for the $10,264.82 from the special project fund to the police department. All those in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye.
Thank you.
thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Item number 9 on the agenda, authorization to approve the 2021 to 2022 transcription services agreement.
I will,
Motion to-
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Diane. That's all right.
Okay, I move that we approve the 2021 to 2022 transcription services agreement and as per our packet this evening.
Second.
Motion by Diane, seconded by Jim to approve the transcription agreement as per the agenda. Diane?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to take a couple quick minutes. Every time this contract comes before us, I always like to weigh in briefly. Years ago, I did a little bit of transcriptioning myself, not nearly as to the extent of what Mr. Kirk Bay does. My personal opinion is that he has done excellent service, provided the city of Onalaska an excellent service for many, many years. Highly detailed minutes. I hear from abutting municipalities that they're almost jealous of what we provide. I think when I look at his contract, he took a cut in 2017. If we approve this tonight, he has stayed at the same rate per line for, it'll be going into 10 years. And I did ask Fred earlier this evening about, for the meeting tonight, what is the total cost of what we have, of this contract for the last 3 years? And it's averaged about $8,100 each year, the past 3 years. As someone who is going to be looking at taking a hard look at our budget for the next year and such, for this year and the next year or two, $8,000 may not sound like a lot of money considering our entire budget, but I'm looking for $5,000 here and $10,000 there. Having said that, I think with the money that we put towards this, we get a great bang for our buck. And I think with the highly detailed minutes, it provides a great education for new alderpersons coming forward, provides a great education for any new employees and department heads that get hired. And I think that if we ever get into any legal issues, it could save our butt. So I will continue to always support, as long as I'm on council, for us continuing to have the transcription contract with Kirk Bay, and as long as he would like to continue with the City of Onalaska. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those of approving the authorization for the 2021 to 2022 transcription services agreement, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, Resolution 2620, authorize the waiver of interest and penalties on property tax payment installments due on or before April 1st of 2020. Fred.
Okay, during this COVID-19 pandemic, I was approached by the county at the end of April and then during the course of May. In your packet, you'll see the county resolution that has been passed. It appears passed towards the tail end of May. Whereas it allows some latitude to individuals if they have made time payments timely, in other words, made their first installment on or before January 31st, would make them eligible to pay prior to, I think, up to October 1st, without being, where normally, if anything would have been outstanding prior years, if it was outstanding after July 31st, interest and penalty would apply, and the county has created a resolution that would give the taxpayers the latitude to pay on to all the way up to October 1st. Now, the key thing to keep in mind, the City of Onalaska and all the other, I shouldn't say just the City of Onalaska, all the rest of the county that receives, and on August 20th, I think it is, our payment in full to all towns, cities, and villages that the county is under. In other words, Onalaska Home, and each one of them will receive their full amount that they're entitled to. In other words, we will be made whole by state statute as outlined by state statute on the 20th of August. And then the county then will continue to collect if there are outstanding ones all the way up to October 1st. That's pretty much in a nutshell. And so the county, what the city attorney did is created the necessary document to endorse the county resolution.
All right, what is the will of the committee?
I move that we approve resolution 26-2020.
Jim, I think you might be muted, Jim. All right, I cannot hear Jim, so I will second resolution 26-2020. For any discussion? I actually have a question, Fred. If I'm understanding this correctly, the money's due to the City of Onalaska in August. We would receive this regardless. So as far as offering leniency to taxpayers and the city still being able to meet its functions, we're in really good shape. Is there any risk if the county, if too many people take advantage of that they would be able to meet their obligation, even though it's statutory?
The way the resolution, and Amanda can tap in, but the way the resolution from the county was put together, as well as Amanda's on top of it, is that we will be made whole in full. As when I settled with the county back in February, we knew exactly what was left outstanding to the city. Will receive all of the funds in its entirety on the 20th of August.
And there's no way that the county would not come through for us.
No, because the county resolution clearly states in its documents is that they are very calling out the state statute and intend to abide by and follow the state statutes as outlined.
All right, we'll have to put our faith in the county, and it sounds like a good deal. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of resolution 26-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, there's Jim.
Mr. Chair, before we go on number 8, are you still looking to have that on a non-consent?
I'm actually satisfied with the explanation. I think maybe it's not a bad idea for citizens to understand that this is not effective. I mean, I guess I don't think there's any reason why it shouldn't be. However, if the will of the committee was to have it be on the consent agenda, I would not draw a line in the sand. The explanation to me was satisfactory. Go ahead, Diane.
I'm fine with item 8 being on the consent agenda. I mean, I believe in clean agendas when we get to council. So, but if any older person, we get to next Tuesday council, if they want to pull it, they can, it is certainly their right to pull it. So.
Well, if we put it on the consent agenda, I would not pull it, but if it was left on non-consent, the brief explanation was satisfactory to me, and in the interest of transparency, it's maybe not a bad idea. But Jim, we'll let you be the tiebreaker. What do you think?
Doesn't matter. Whatever the chair wants, that's fine.
All right. So not hearing any strong one way or the other, let's just leave it on the consent agenda. That's fine.
Thank you.
All right. Thus concludes the finance portion. Moving on to personnel. Hope, are you with us? I see you, but I don't hear you.
I know. I had to unmute myself. I am still here.
Item number 11, an update from Human Resources, that's Hope, on staff vacancies.
Yes, so we have a lot going on still. With the fire chief, we did meet on Tuesday to review the applications. And we have dates set up to meet with applicants, both with the professional panel and dates for police and fire. So those will be coming up soon, and we're excited about getting through that. So we'll be doing that yet in June. So I've contacted all the groups that are going to be on the professional panel. So I will be contacting applicants tomorrow so that they can start getting things scheduled. And then with the city clerk position, we did complete interviews on Monday, and the position was offered to Joanne Marcon. So she has accepted the position of the city clerk. So she will be taking that position on July 6th. So we will have somebody replacing Carrie when she does retire. So now we will be replacing the deputy city clerk, and that'll be a position that we'll be posting both internally and externally through the city. So that is something that I'm working on yet this week to get posted. Police department openings. So we will be interviewing on Monday with the professional panel. We have 3 applicants that will be interviewing for the police officer position that we have vacant currently. And then we'll be meeting with the Police and Fire Commission on Wednesday. And so hopefully we will have an applicant that we can get hired within the next month. So that is our goal. And with the fire department openings, I believe we've got our top 2 candidates. I do know that one did not pass the CPAT, so they're hoping to go through a couple more times and maybe pass that. If they don't, they'll drop to the bottom of the list, and then we'll go to the next candidate from there. But we have 2 existing openings on top of the 3 that were approved through the budget. Then with the administrative assistant paralegal, we're still holding that position until the building's open again, and obviously through the budget meeting next week. The office clerical support and finance, we did interviews prior to me going on vacation. We did some testing, and I'll be reviewing them this week to determine our top candidate. Mac's last day was Monday in the building inspection. I just have gotten notification from our commercial inspector, and so he will be retiring soon. I believe in August will be sometime his last day. So we have several retirements going on in the inspection department as well. Right now, we're still planning on having GEC take care of those positions. Brad is our kind of last employee in as an inspector, and he's planning on continuing with us, so we're happy to keep him. Ben, our computer support specialist, is leaving on Friday. So his last day will be June 5th. So if you do see him, wish him well. He is leaving right now. We are going to be utilizing MCS services until we kind of look at the job duties and job descriptions to evaluate if there's any changes we want to make with that. So that is kind of what we have going on in HR in a nutshell. So with recruitment.
Looks like you have your hands full. I did notice you said so. So Joanne will become the city clerk on July 6th. I thought Carrie was
So-
going to be with us until August. Is that? Did I have the date wrong?
Her last day of actual work will be July 10th. So there'll be a week overlap. And then she'll actually be on vacation. So
Okay.
that's how some of our retirement works. They take their remaining vacation. So her last day of employment will be, I think like August 21st, if I recall. So she'll still be an employee, but she'll not be working. So effectively, she will no longer be technically working or in any kind of employee capacity once she's done on the 10th.
And then at the bottom, I noticed you talked about the potential for the influx of applications due to COVID. Are we able to post for the positions with the idea that we don't actually have a, the start date will pend, or are you going to wait until we can start looking at people to post the position?
For which positions?
Like one of them was the administrative assistant paralegal. Really anything that we're not able to do anything because City Hall is closed. Are we able to at least get a head start on that? Eric?
Well, at least with the administrative assistant paralegal, we actually did interviews and some testing, but at this point, we haven't done anything further, just because by the time we did all of the interviews and we were about ready to set testing up,
The rug got
down.
pulled up
So
underneath you.
there was no point in bringing anybody in to do any kind of training or do testing because we weren't going to be able to train them anyway. I think Eric has his hand up though. So
Yes, he does. Eric?
Yeah, you covered what we were saying, that it's not because the building wasn't open, we couldn't do the interview. We actually did that, but without Amanda or I there to train, we would effectively hire someone to not do anything they weren't qualified to do. So we put that on hold. We anticipate then being next week to be able to contact those candidates back, see if they're still interested. And if not, we may have to redo the recruitment, but it didn't make sense to make an offer to somebody and then furlough them or something. So we decided to.
That makes a lot of sense. I just wondered if we kind of we could pick up where we left off potentially if they're still interested and haven't moved on.
Yep.
Or if we had to start from scratch. So, all right. Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Hope? No other questions for Hope. So with that, we will move on to item 12. Closed session, to consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 19.85, parent 1, parent E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Specifically, IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, Local 127, OPA, or OPPA, Unalaska Police Association, Memorandum of Understanding Recruits, and under section 19.85, parent 1, parent G of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or likely to become involved. IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, Local 127, prohibited practice complaint regarding part-time EMTs. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, committee will reconvene in open session to take necessary action and or continue on with the printed agenda.
Motion to go into closed.
Second,
Motion by Jim, seconded by Diane to go into closed session. Without any discussion, all those in favor of going into closed?
roll, Diane, I.
Jim, I.
Dan, I. We are now in closed session. Give
Let me
Amanda
just-
time to
1 minute.
turn it off.